Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking an incredibly intense, literal life or death dilemma nestled deep within an ancient text. We're looking at an excerpt from the Bhagavata Parva, which is this profoundly gripping segment of the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata. And, what makes unpacking this specific text so absolutely compelling is that we are looking at human psychology stripped down to its barest, most raw elements. We're going to examine a moment of total, catastrophic crisis for one family. But what makes this so fascinating isn't just the sheer danger they're facing. It's this incredibly structured, deeply logical, and just ultimately heartbreaking argument constructed by a wife. She's desperately trying to convince her husband to let her die in his place. It's a literal masterpiece of rhetoric born out of sheer terror.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to imagine an impossible scenario. Your family is faced with an unavoidable threat, and the only way to save the family unit, the whole shebang, is for one person to willingly go to their death. So, who makes that ultimate sacrifice? I mean, this goes against every single core biological instinct we have for self-preservation, right? It pits that survival instinct directly against the fierce instinctual love we have for our families. And more importantly, if you decide you are the one who has to go, how do you logically convince the people who love you that it just has to be you? How do you craft an argument so flawless that your spouse has literally no choice but to let you die? This is the dramatic, pulse-pounding tension we are walking into today.
Section 1. The Ultimate Sacrifice Dilemma.
So, we open our narrative on a scene of just paralyzing despair. A Brahmana, who is a deeply learned man and the head of this household, is weeping. But his wife steps forward, and instead of joining him in this panic, she presents a highly structured, emotionally resonant, and culturally grounded argument for why she has to be the one to die. To really understand the gravity of her position, we have to fully grasp the threat they're dealing with. The family is facing a Rakshasa. Now, in the context of this source text, a Rakshasa is a powerful, mythological being or demon demanding a human sacrifice as a brutal toll. This isn't some vague, distant danger, The threat is absolute. It's unavoidable. There is no running away, there's no hiding. Which means the guarantee of death for one family member is a fixed, terrifying variable in this equation. Somebody is not surviving the night.
Section 2. The Argument of Duty. Now, you might expect the wife to start her argument with pure emotion, but she doesn't. She begins with foundation. She builds her case on the absolute bedrock of the ancient societal norms that govern their everyday lives. She tells her husband, this indeed is the highest and the eternal duty of a woman, viz., that by sacrificing her life, she should seek the good of her husband. She's very deliberately utilizing the stark cultural framework she operates within. She reminds him that, death is inevitable for all men eventually, and that by doing this she is achieving the highest possible virtue recognized by their society. What is so incredibly powerful here is that she frames her death not as a senseless tragedy, but as the ultimate, glorious fulfillment of her designated role. She literally transforms a terrifying sacrifice into a sacred obligation. Now, what's really interesting about this is how systematically she deconstructs her own ongoing utility to the household. She essentially argues that her primary societal duties, they're already complete. She has borne him a daughter and a son. And because of this, she states she's entirely freed from the debt she owed him. You see, in this ancient context, marriage was often viewed through this lens of societal and familial debts that had to be repaid, usually through childbirth and service. By having a male heir and a daughter, her ledger, at least in her own eyes, is clear. She even argues that this sacrifice will bring her fame in this world and eternal bliss in the next. She's effectively saying, look, my work here is done, I've given you everything required, and this final act is my ultimate reward. But she takes the logic even further, breaking down this cold, highly calculated hierarchy of protection laid out by the wise men and scholars of their culture. Step 1, you guard your wealth to free yourself from danger. Step 2, you use that wealth to protect your wife. But step 3, the ultimate rule, is that a man must protect his own self above all else. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a man must protect himself, even at the total expense of his wealth and his wife. She is brilliantly using the ancient patriarchal teachings of their own society to box him into a logical corner. The very rules designed to elevate men are the exact weapons she uses to force his hand. Because according to the texts he studies, the patriarch's life is the ultimate asset. It has to be protected at all costs. Section 3. Protecting the children. Having laid all that logical and dutiful groundwork, she shifts her pacing. She moves to the raw, emotional core of her plea, the survival of their son and daughter. She asks this absolutely piercing question, bereft of thee, how shall I, without thee, keep alive the pair, myself leading an honest life? She admits a profound vulnerability right here. She is terrified of navigating a masterless, widowed state. In this historical context, a woman without the protection of a husband or a grown son was intensely, dangerously vulnerable to exploitation and ruin. She acknowledges that while he is totally well-equipped to financially and socially support and cherish the kids, if she dies, she can't possibly do the same if he dies. Her love is brutally practical. She starts detailing these specific, devastating societal dangers waiting for the family if the patriarch is the one to die. She paints a horrifying picture of a very near future, Without his protection, she fears their innocent daughter will be solicited by dishonorable, unworthy men who basically view a fatherless family as easy prey. Worse, she fears the girl could simply be taken away by force with no man to defend her. She worries her son won't have his father's virtuous example, will lack the resources for a proper education, and will inevitably stray from the righteous path. Ultimately, she fears the fragmented remnants of their family will be utterly despised and discarded by a ruthless world. To really drive this terror home, she uses some incredibly vivid, visceral imagery. She compares the plight of a widow to this striking metaphor. Like birds seek with avidity for meat that hath been thrown away on the ground. Think about that. This illustrates exactly how the text views the predatory nature of men soliciting a woman who's lost her husband's protection. It's not just poetic flair. This was a literal, grinding fear for daily survival. It highlights a brutal reality where, without a male protector, the world outside their door transforms immediately into a flock of scavengers, just waiting to pick their vulnerable family apart. And this brilliantly illustrates her fear for their daughter, too. If she refuses to give her daughter to these unworthy, scavenging men, she fears they'll just take her by force, like crows carrying away the sacrificial butter. Now, in this ancient culture, sacrificial butter, or ghee, represented the absolute utmost purity. It was an offering meant only for the divine. By comparing her daughter to this sacred offering and the men to crows, she emphasizes the absolute sacredness of the child and the sacrilegious, thieving nature of the society waiting to exploit them. It makes the horror of what will happen to their daughter if the father dies hit with maximum impact. Finally, she wraps up her fears for the children with this devastating line: "Without their father, they will perish, like fish when the water drieth up." This is the ultimate emotional checkmate. She isn't just saying they'll be profoundly sad without him. She's stating a biological, environmental fact about their survival. Just as fish cannot negotiate with a dry riverbed, she's telling him that without his presence, their very environment becomes entirely incompatible with life. The children will suffocate in his absence. Section 4. The Rakshasa's moral loophole. Just when the argument seems as dark and desperate as it can possibly get, she introduces a brilliant, surprising, strategic pivot. She says, those that are conversant with the morals have said that women should never be slaughtered and that Rakshasas are not ignorant of the rules of morality. I mean, wow, this is a staggeringly cunning loophole. She realizes that while it's absolutely certain the Rakshasa will kill a man, it's actually highly doubtful whether he will kill a woman. How ironic is it that the terrifying man-eating monster waiting outside might actually be more bound by ancient rules of morality than the predatory men waiting to exploit a widow? She is suggesting that offering herself might actually save her own life too, because even monsters know you don't slaughter women. To seal this deal, she points to a stark double standard of their era. According to their source texts, if she dies, the husband can simply remarry, as polygamy for a man is considered an act of merit. He can continue to acquire religious merit, have more children, and rebuild his life seamlessly. But if he dies, it's considered very sinful for a woman to take a second husband, while predeceasing her lord is the highest merit a woman can achieve. Now remember, we are analyzing the rigid rules of the source material here, and she is using them perfectly. She is weaponizing their era's double standards to irrefutably prove exactly why she is the optimal sacrifice. So, the crucial point is, when you lay it all out, it essentially becomes a survival calculus, and the answer becomes undeniable. If the husband is sacrificed, the family perishes socially, financially, and physically. The children are ruined, the widow is preyed upon. But if the wife is sacrificed, the husband can legally and socially remarry, the children remain fully protected, she gains eternal spiritual merit, and, here's the brilliant wild card, there is a distinct chance the Rakshasa spares her anyway due to ancient moral laws. It is a flowless, airtight logical argument born out of sheer devotion. It is literal math applied to a nightmare. Section 5. The final heartbreak. The wife has laid out her duty, her terrifying fears for her children, a total mastery of cultural law, and a brilliant tactical loophole. The argument is completely over. And how does the husband respond to this undeniable, perfect plea? Well, the text tells us, thus addressed by her, O Bharata, the Brahmana embraced her, and they both began to weep in silence. He has no logical counterargument, he is completely defeated by her reasoning, and entirely shattered by the crushing reality of it. The man of learning has been totally out-argued by his wife, and all that is left to do is hold her, accept the unbearable truth, and weep in silence. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a profound question to chew on. Looking at this ancient text, we see a woman using every single tool at her disposal: logic, societal law, raw emotional vulnerability, and tactical loopholes, all to save her family. It's an absolute masterclass in persuasion under the most dire circumstances imaginable. It leaves us asking, in the face of absolute destruction, does duty override love, or does love demand the ultimate duty? Thanks for joining me as we explored the anatomy of this fascinating plea.